Hello and welcome to another episode of Tactical Edge. I'm Siobhan Cleveland, 4th Air Force Public Affairs. Joining us today is Chief Master Sergeant Timothy White, Senior Enlisted Advisor to Chief of Air Force Reserve and Command Chief Master Sergeant of Air Force Reserve Command. And also with us is 4th Air Force Command Chief Master Sergeant Cynthia Villa. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan.
And thank you, Chief White, for taking the time. Again, I've heard, I know before we were discussing before we started recording that you were part of 4th Air Force here, and I've heard a lot about you. So thank you so much. I'm glad I finally get to meet you.
Awesome. The pleasure's all mine.
All right, so we're just going to jump right into it. We have a lot to discuss today. We're going to talk about the future of enlisted development, EPRs, developmental boards, etc. Chief V, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you for further discussion of those topics.
All right, Siobhan, I got it. Chief White, first and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this afternoon. I know you are a busy man. You and General Scobie are definitely busy. So again, once again, thank you very much for taking the time to share some discussion. As Siobhan brought up, I just kind of wanted to go over a couple of topics that hopefully you can provide perspective, insight. Our airmen are definitely curious and want to hear from you. So I figured what a better opportunity than to have Chief White give us a little insight on a couple of topics. Those insights being, enlisted force development, EFD. I know Chief Master of the Air Force is working on several initiatives and perhaps a couple of things that you can share with us. Along with enlisted evaluation system, what's that going to look like specific to Air Force Reserve Command, the future of our EPRs, and then developmental boards. I know in the past we had the E8, E9, DT. Yep. That's kind of transitioned to an AFSC specific development board, and the E9 in conjunction with the Command Chief Screening Board. And just overall, Chief White, if you can share, what do you see as the future for our reserve airmen in these topics and just overall opportunities as a whole?
Yeah. Hey, so first of all, Cindy, I want to say, hey, thank you for this opportunity. And, I got the invite to join the 4th Air Force Tactical Edge a little while ago, and we just now getting around to making it work. But hey, that's just a testament to the amazing things that you're doing over there at 4th Air Force. And I didn't have a podcast back when I was in 4th Air Force, and so definitely know that this is an opportunity to connect with airmen and get an opportunity to really hear from us. So really, hey, I'm just completely thrilled just to be able to talk in this forum. So when I talk about enlisted force development, it was really something that my predecessor, Chief Kelly, was really a champion of. And if you recall, her 3 priorities or focus areas was leadership, development, and heritage. So just being a part of the team when I was down at the NAF and how enlisted force development. It was front and center, really when I took the seat, and just how much that it has evolved until now. Interesting enough, things with the RegAF, they are moving 100 miles an hour. And right now, I think we asked for an extension just to make sure that we get it right. But there's the enlisted force development action plan that is at the all of the MAGCOM DCOMs for CORD, just to make sure, for one, that the O's are in sync to what we're doing, and just to make sure that that we grant them all that information that's where we're going, to make sure that we don't miss anything, but then more importantly, that we have their support. So actually, it's actually sitting with General Berger right now. And so what it does is that it gives us kind of an opportunity to weigh in, and especially as a MAGCOM, but more importantly, as a component perspective, because enlisted force development impacts ourselves in the Guard differently than it does the other MAGCOMs. So one of the other things that I'm looking at doing, and I've been talking with General Berger, having a series of conversations with him, is about, when we talk about enlisted force development, is actually moving that position up here to the Pentagon, because again, you know Chief Blaze and some of the other folks that Chief Castillo that are working enlisted force development. And so what I found is that unless we got somebody in the room, or unless we have somebody at the table, sometimes when things are already set in motion and we're brought in after the fact, then it causes a little bit more pain than it would have if we were just in the seat at the beginning. So having our enlisted force development chief at the table in the room, so I can get that information left of the bank before the decisions are made, is really going to help us tremendously. So one of the other things that I'm also looking at is we have one position right now geared towards enlisted force development, and that's our enlisted force development chief. Should we have two? Should we have one at the MAGCOM? Should we have one here at the at RE to set alongside our policy folks, those type of pieces, because there's just so many moving parts. Now, and when we talk about some of the things that I'm sure everybody's heard about, the blueprint, prepping the line, all those type of things that we really get after first line supervisors, so they're prepped and they're prepared sooner rather than later. All of those things come under enlisted force development. So a lot of changes. There's a bunch of working groups that are out there right now, and we make sure that that we have people that sit on all of those working groups, whether it's EPRs, enlisted force development, you name it, so that we can make sure that that our input is gathered and is collected. And I would say that right now, the relationships between the components, myself or the Air Force Reserve, the Guard, and the regular Air Force, I would say is probably better than any time I can recall it in the last few years that I can recall, because now RegAF, they want Guard input, they want Reserve input before they make those decisions, because they know the second, third order effects if we don't get it right. So yeah, a lot of things, Cindy, and I know I share a lot of those things with you, but I think it's critical that we get that position moved here, so they're in the room with RegAF, in the room with the Air National Guard, to make sure that those impacts for the Air Force Reserves are going to be noted up front versus after the fact. And I think that's vital.
So you brought up a couple of great points, Chief White, and I'm really excited to hear that, you know, like you said, having a seat at the table makes a huge difference, and I appreciate you sharing that. I know in one of the briefings that we had the opportunity to be a part of with Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, one of the statements that was made specific to EFD was, you know, developing enlisted supervisors for the airmen that we need. What's your take and perspective on that, and how is that going to work out, or what initiatives are we going to roll out, if you will, within Air Force Reserve Command to make sure that that's the direction that we're heading towards?
You know, so great point, Cindy. You know that I think sometimes it can appear that that I spend a lot of my attention and efforts on the senior enlisted, and so I firmly believe that if we get that piece of it right, if we get the supervision, the right leaders in place, everything else will kind of trickle down. But really, it's exactly what you're talking about. My primary concern and focus is on our junior enlisted airmen, and that frontline supervisor is critical. You know, so we say that you know, our airmen are our most valued possession. But take a look at a let's say a F-35 aircraft. We'll send you to BMT. We'll send you to tech school, and we give you all these tools and things that you need to be successful. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in getting you schooled and prepped for that. And then when you get to your home unit, the last thing that we do is cut you loose on that weapon system, because you know that if we don't get it right, things will go wrong and lives are depending on it. But what do? When it comes to our personnel, again, that we say is our most valued resource, we send you to ALS and we make you a supervisor, and then we just turn you loose on some airmen and say, here you go. Now go lead and go fix it. And so what we realize is that if we don't do that to a weapon system, and if our human capital, our most valued resource, if they truly are our most valued resource, then why would we turn supervisors, or why would we turn our young trainees over to a supervisor, and we haven't really given them the tools to be successful? So certainly, I think that instead of saying, hey, here you go, you just returned from ALS, now you're a staff sergeant, here's 9 airmen to supervise, I think that we need to walk through that process. And that's a part of, or we need to make sure that we're walking young supervisors through that process. And that's a part of the prepping the line, the enlisted force development strategy that CMSAF BASS is trying to get after, and my RegAF MAJCOM counterparts. Because I mean, it's certainly, I can be a supervisor by title, I can be a supervisor by rank, but if you think about it, if some of our young supervisors, if I don't have the tools, or I haven't had the experience, and I mean something simple as a letter of counseling, or speaking to someone just about financial responsibilities, some of those type of things, those things that will be vital to your career. And as a young staff sergeant, hey, guess what? I haven't even experienced some of those things myself. So it's going to be hard for me to, I think, to counsel or provide, I would say, counsel, recommendation, experience, and I haven't even experienced them myself. So, hey, let me walk through an ACA. Let me walk through a feedback section. Let me walk through that with somebody who's done it before I employ it in a situation to where it counts. So we definitely we can't rely on ALS, PME. We can't just rely on those things as our hey, you got this and you check the box, now go lead. We got to be able to rely on our experience and some of those things that we only get sometimes through trial and error, but we want to make sure that that we minimize those errors by equipping especially our young supervisors with the tools that's necessary. And after you go through, say, somewhat of a apprenticeship, and where you can prove that you can successfully navigate airmen through some of these challenges, then that's perhaps, I would say, the time that we can say that, hey, we can go ahead and turn you loose on some of our airmen with still some guided supervision.
Yeah, that's spot on, Chief. And I think you would agree that emotion intelligence piece,
Yeah.
that human factor of being able to connect with people, because that goes a long ways, and it's definitely game changing. Ultimately, it's all about setting up our supervisors and our subordinates for success. That's what we'd like to do. So really excited about hearing about that. Now, just one last point or question, Chief, with regards to EFD. Many of our wings they're definitely leading initiatives with, whether it's with, PME specific or just development as a whole in all these areas that you just talked about. Do you see a possibility in the future where, again, because our wings are getting creative, they understand that we're never going to have enough seats of you name it for whatever course, right? It just doesn't work that way. We compete with the Guard and RegAF, and that's just the way it is. So we have to get creative, right? Do you foresee in the future an opportunity, a possibility where we are able to give our members that are attending these courses that are wing initiatives, giving them full credit, so that when they meet these boards, whether it's DT boards or EDB, you name it, we're giving them the credit that they deserve for attending these courses?
Yeah, so I'll even back up when we talk about being creative. Cindy, you guys just did one just the other day when I came on. I think was about a week or so ago, and you put together the first. In my opinion, I think it might have been the first group senior enlisted leader course that between you, Chen Cox, and some of the others got together and put together. And this was something that hey, guess what? You didn't wait on command, or you didn't wait on the PDC, or wait on me to roll something out. You took the initiative to say, hey, we have a need, and the need is now, and we're going to give these folks some development. So and when it comes to, I think, resources, competing priorities, there's always going to be competing priorities. And when just from a lack of personnel, and so the PDC is doing some great things. Again, when you talked about some of the seats, whether it's in residence, the ED, courses that we have, I mean, we have such limited resources and limited opportunities. A lot of times people kind of get turned away from it because I would say, or I won't say distracted, but you will get just it's easy to get discouraged because we don't always have those opportunities. So what can we do in the meantime? What can we do to fill that gap in between the time that I go to either NCO, senior NCO, all those type of things? This is what you're doing right now is one of them. Now, should you get any credit for sitting to watching me talk and ramble on for 30 minutes? Probably not. But hopefully there's something that I think that if it's not anything but just information and those type of things that we can share in forums like this that can help you to be more aware of some of the opportunities that were out there, then of course we can make a difference. So when it comes to as far as credit and those type of things, hey, we're constantly looking at a way that how can we do multiple things as far as if I'm a say a cop on the outside. Do I necessarily have to do the firearms training all the time, or if I'm a nurse on the outside, do I have to do X amount of training when I do this at my civilian capacity all the time? So even if we start to giving credit to some of those type of things, that will free up some of our time to, I think, to work on AFSC specific skills type of training and initiative. So there are some things that we're already doing when it comes to that. And of course, there's some credentialing programs that are out there that we know that Guard and reservists bring a unique skill set that can be applied to the outside. So there's credentialing programs that go along with that. Air Force Cool, myself and my counterpart Chief Williams from the Air National Guard, we've been talking to A1 just about some of those other type of programs that reservists can get credit for. But I certainly think that there's things that we can do at the group level, things that we can do at the wing level that we can kind of give, I think, credit for. I would go back probably up until most recently, if we'll say the chief orientation course, that we would send you to the chief orientation course or the command chief orientation course. Will send you to the RegAF because it's nice for you to go, and we want you to start the relationships and type of those type of things. But at the same time, we would still make you attend ours because, hey, it was just something that we've always done. So in speaking with you and the other NAV command chiefs, hey, we should give people credit for attending a RegAF course and not make them come back and attend ours just because we've always done it. So certainly, I think, Cindy, there's a lot of things that we can do. There's certainly not enough opportunities to go around to award or grant opportunities. So I think what we got to do a better job is identifying what our members bring to the table in their civilian capacities, in their jobs, their training, all those type of things, and recognizing that once we meet these DT boards and those type of things. So I think whether we give them credit for some of the skills that they bring on the outside when we do our own DT process is certainly one. And then it's also, I think, the education piece or helping whether it's hiring officials, sometimes our Reg Av counterparts, recognizing that this is a unique skill set training that we bring from the civilian sector that can be equally applied here. And I think that we're doing a better job in that aspect.
Thanks, Chief. And, our reserve citizen airmen, what a better example, the unique skill sets that they bring to the table, to the fight, and the level of experience, I think you would agree it is second to none, just second to none, period. Really. So I'm happy to hear that. Transitioning slightly here, Chief, with regards to the enlisted evaluation system and the upcoming changes. I know the SIMSAF has shared, narrative style moving forward, and then the point system. Just curious if you could briefly share your perspective on the way forward, specific to reservists on the new or upcoming enlisted evaluation system changes.
Yeah, so some of that, well, so as far as with the EPR, whether it's going to be the 910 and the 911 and the 912, hey, those will, we're going to be lockstep with the changes that Reg Av puts forth. And we also have representatives that sit on those panels or are part of those think tanks, working groups, to make sure that we share our perspective and how those changes will impact us. So with the narrative form, there is going to be some type of narrative form, but I would say there's been some type of misunderstanding when it comes to narrative form, because their EPRs will not look like a citation, right? So we're not going to get to a point to where your entire EPR is a citation. That's not what we're getting at. I think what we're getting at is, hey, let's make sure that, and sometimes just in plain English, that the EPRs are, they have substance, they provide value, and basically they're easy to understand. For so long, and I grew up in that system too. And Cindy, you and I, we sat on various boards, and AOYs, OAYs, those type of things. And guess what? If it don't contain a semicolon and it don't contain two dashes, and if there's any white spaces in between, then guess what? That's not because we were just that was so much ingrained into our mind that this is what a EPR needs to look at. And the harder it is to understand and to read, the better it must be, right? And it's sometimes when I sit in sometimes in these meetings, and I'm looking at a graph and I can't understand it, and I'll have the courage to say, hey, can you what is this graph representing? And then you find out that person I'm asking can't understand it. So what it is that we got to get away from stump the dummy and just being able to talk in plain English and just so then that way, so our airmen are not discouraged and they're not losing points and values because an EPR doesn't look how we've been so conditioned, I think, to view EPRs. And as far as the point system, some of that may not really pertain to us because Reg Av, they have a formula that's based on your last EPR versus, how many points does that count for when you comes to like testing and all those type of things, because our promotions are based on vacancies and not test. So that aspect may or may not impact us right now. But what we do is, what I always want to do is I want to make sure that as reservists, as they go up and they compete for positions, hey, you name it, I want to make sure that the EPRs that we send up, the packages that we send up, our members are given a equal chance and an equal opportunity, because when who's ever the hiring official, when they read an EPR, whether it's a RegAF EPR, a guard, or a reserve EPR, that they're looking at one and they're looking at one and the same. And what I mean by that is that so we're on board with all the changes that RegAF is going to make, and we got to make sure that culturally we make sure that that we adapt. And when it's, I mean, you name it, EPRs, DT process, enlisted force development, all those type of things, you name it. And sometimes we can be slow to need, and we know that we've been doing things for such a long time, and change can be hard. But hey, if you don't like change, try being irrelevant. And that's exactly where we will find ourselves if we don't keep up with the pace of change. So we'll keep up. The plan is for us to be lockstep when it makes sense, and just with the understanding that there's going to be certain variances that may not apply for us, and that's just again an education piece that we'll have to continuously relay.
Yeah, personally, Chief, I know this is one of the things that I always said, geez, I would like to see something different in the future. And it's exciting to hear that, we're getting there. As a matter of fact, we're already moving in that direction. And as I get in discussions with, my fellow airmen, my fellow teammates, peers, it's interesting because at the end of the day, I think you would agree, regardless of what EPR system, evaluation system that we have in place, bottom line, there's got to be some integrity to that process. Otherwise, we're going to encounter the same issues. So we have to make sure that, our evaluations are done and completed with integrity and accuracy. Otherwise, we will have some challenges in the future.
And you know what that, so when you talk about, so a couple things with that too, Cindy, is that when you're talking about with that integrity piece. So the last time, an airman should never learn how he or she is not performing is when it's at an EPR, right? You should never, or you never should be told that when you come up for a job or an opportunity, and that's the first time that you ever told that, hey, guess what? You're not the right candidate because of X, Y, and Z. But I got an EPR that says, hey, I'm performing exceptionally, and I'm knocking it out of the park. But at the same time, nobody has had that conversation. So it's a two-way street, and this is where us really as enlisted, especially senior enlisted, when we gotta have those hard conversations. I would tell you it was a part of the culture. For years in writing the EPRs, and especially with enlisted EPRs, unless you're an AGR, you're doing what, every 2 years if you're a traditional reservist. And for years, and I'll be the first one to tell on myself, if I had to write an EPR for somebody else or for myself, it's like, hey, when was the feedback conducted? You say yep, and you pick a date, and hopefully it fell on the weekend, so it kind of makes sense. But were we really giving people that feedback? Were we really conducting those ACAs, those airman assessments, right? So now with the new EPR system, hey, it's going to force you to, because the proof will be in the pudding. We won't be able to fake it till we make it. You actually going to be able to have to show that you are actually performing feedbacks and you are actually doing, and then there's going to be a mechanism to where you rating on, they have the ability to also provide feedback on you and to rate on you as well. So there's a lot of concepts, a lot of things that I think that, once this new EPR system rolls out, that it's going to be a lot of changes. But you're right. When it comes to that, integrity piece, and again, it's culture. you and I both, Cindy, especially me, I grew up in a culture to where if you weren't, we don't use the term firewall 5, but if you weren't actually, you know, far right or firewall 5, whatever it is like that, if your EPR didn't reflect that, then hey, guess what? It was something wrong with you, or you weren't performing. And then you try to course correct and give honest assessment. And then it's difficult because culturally we're not there yet. So the only thing that we can do is really just kind of toe the line. And again, you heard my spiel on balls and strikes. So now it's just to make sure that that as we're giving that feedback and we're documenting those things on an EPR, that the integrity goes a long way. And we need to make sure that we're being accurate and honest, really, with our assessments.
Yeah. And in two ways, to your point, right, Chief? As a supervisor, am I doing my due diligence, and I'm doing right by my team member, my subordinate, to set them up for success? Otherwise, that's unfair. So that integrity piece is both on the subordinate side and on the supervisor side. Great points. How do you think the annual chief EPRs is working for us? And, we heard a lot of noise going back and forth. Some people were on board, some weren't. And I don't want to get too caught up in the conversation on this, but in your opinion, is that working for us?
Yeah, so this year, so 2022, let me see. So so the SCOT in 21 was in May of that was the last time that we did, and that would have been on our normal SCOT. So next year, we'll go to the chiefs for every EPR. It's funny. So when I made that change, and especially Cindy, so think about it. We'll talk, and then we got some capable people that are out here. I mean, we got in the reserve, we got the benefit of having leaders that come from private industry, that bring from a lot of unique skills. But sometimes, so when they compete at positions, and the thing is, when you talk about opportunity, Cindy, I had no idea the amount of opportunities that are out there for reservists, and really until I got into this seat. So think about how we do EPRs, and we do EPRs for a traditional reservist or an IMA. Other than an AGR, you do them every 2 years. And I could be a fast burner, I could be knocking it out of the park. And because I am so good at my job, at what I do, it's quite possible that I can compete for a chief assignment. But depending on how I promote, I can have a EPR as a tech, an EPR as a master, and an EPR as a senior for my last 3 EPRs, because we're talking about 6 years now. And then I'm going to compete for a position over at the White House or something else that I could be actually very qualified for. And then I'm going up against chiefs that got their last 3 EPRs are all chiefs. And so we've done ourselves, I think, in my opinion, a disservice by doing that. When I first rolled that out and said, hey, we're going to annual EPRs for all chiefs, I had a chief, and take it, what is an EPR for chiefs now? 5 bullets, 5 lines. I had a chief send me 30 bullets on why it was such a bad idea, or 15 bullets on why it was such a bad idea. You gave me 3 years or 3 EPRs worth of bullets of why we shouldn't do something that I think that was obvious for us to do. And even that, and really, Cindy, what it really came down to was the argument, and even amongst some of the people that sit around in the enlisted side and help me sometimes make decisions. Some of the arguments were, well, a chief and a UTA, it's only 12 UTAs, and we don't really do enough to have a strong EPR. Hey, I can care less if you got a strong EPR. I'm looking for an accurate EPR. So if you're a chief and 5 bullets on an EPR, and you can't put together enough data that shows, and even if it's on 12 UTAs, then that what you bring to the fight, and I got some serious questions about that. On top of that, we do officers EPRs regardless of status every single year. So you mean to tell me that there's a second lieutenant that's out there, and I love my second lieutenants, don't get me wrong, but we got a second lieutenant, a first lieutenant, a captain, and the officers think it's important to them to have a OPR every single year, but we don't do that for chiefs. That just don't pass the test for me. And if you are a chief out there and there's an officer that can put together how many ever bullets on an OPR that ranks quote unquote a strong EPR, and you can't as a chief, I gotta kind of wonder how'd you make chief in the first place. So I am good where we at. I think Chief White's or Tim White's opinion, we probably should look at seniors. We should even look at master sergeants. But then again, it's always that balance of the time it takes, UTAs, and all those type of things, and we got to take that in consideration. But believe me, I have seen people that extremely competitive for positions, but their records don't reflect that because of the way that we used to do EPRs on a biannual basis. So I think that's definitely the right move. And then also, when it kind of goes back, Cindy, to when I talked about my really focus is on those junior enlisted, that small enlisted corps, because hey, if you're not performing in the role, and if you're not holding your end of the bargain and taking care of our most valued possession, then an EPR should reflect that, and leadership needs to be aware of that, and we need to make sure that even though you are a chief, that we're not putting you in a position of greater responsibility because for whatever reason that hey, you're just not there yet. So when we talk about making a swap, hey, I'd be glad to, hey, let's let second lieutenants or first lieutenants, let them go biannual if we want to talk about saving some time, effort, and energy. But giving chiefs honest feedback every single year was a small I think a price to pay in what we're going to get out of it. And that's basically a record of performance, not only for future opportunities, but to make sure that that you're holding your end of the bargain and how you're performing right now.
Yeah, agree with you 100%, Chief, and I witnessed firsthand the goodness behind that thought process. So thank you for that. And I know we're running out of time. You and I can have discussion all day long on all kinds of good topics. But with regards to DT boards, AFSC specific, but more so on our E9 DT Command Chief Screening Board, not necessarily just primarily on that, just overall, if you will. A lot of the feedback that we get, and rightfully so, I can't deny it, with regards to vectors. If you can just briefly speak on that, Chief, I'd greatly appreciate it. We're here next week. We're going to be having our E9 DT Command Chief Screening Board. Just curious to hear from you. Is that going to change slightly? Do you foresee some changes in the way we're vectoring points, all encompassing?
Yeah, so hey, great question, Cindy. As a matter of fact, I think we're teed up for a meeting next week. As I make my way around the command, I would say the feedback that I get the most is on our DT process. And so we made a couple of changes, and again, we made a couple of changes with the whole DT process. One was we didn't make it mandatory for you to do then we do it through my vector, but an RADP just to meet the EDEB, because there were some people that really weren't interested in vectoring or feedback. They were happy with where they were at the time, but hey, I want a developmental opportunity. So we were kind of like forcing people if you want to even be considered for an EDEB opportunity, you had to do a RADP. So we basically, I think, decoupled that, and that was the right move to do in that aspect. So now, if it's just that, hey, you want to look for an opportunity for the EDEB, the Reserve Education Development Board, then all you got to do is submit a application just for that. So I think that was the right move. The second piece was when we look at our KPL positions, and out of the 400 some odd KPL, I think that's kind of where we're at. There were really only about four senior positions that were even KPL positions. So we spent an enormous amount of time, effort, and energy on our seniors, having them compete for this process, and there were very limited opportunities. And then it was, I think that, and I would pull up somebody's EPR, and it would say command under other achievements, command KPL or command, those type of things, which is awesome, but it just kind of gave me a moment of pause, and it just kind of shared with me that I think that we somehow kind of lost focus. So if you are a senior, the opportunities for you to promote is really going to come, the majority of them is going to come into your career field. And that's where the functional, I would think that's where the functional, I think KPL, that's where the functional DT process is. And I think that's where that actually belonged. And so I'm a pretty hard stickler when it comes to some of those the boards that I oversee, or what, you got to be on the command chief screening board list if you want to be a command chief. Or for 9D, I'm pretty strict because I'm extremely involved with that process. Not a perfect process, but I can stand behind it because of the effort that goes into it. Well, I feel that same way about our functionals, and I definitely wanted to put the emphasis on the functional communities that, hey, guess what? You got to be responsible for developing your personnel in your career field. So put the same level of effort and energy, and I wanted our seniors to because they were just competing for the command DT and not their own functional in certain cases, but your opportunities for promotion are greater in your functional lane. So that was a purpose, what I think that the reason why we did the split. Now, as far as a feedback, there are a couple things that I get all the time, and especially it's from arts, right? When we tell arts, hey, tell us, to stop, not to move, and also, hey, don't, why are you telling me to go to CLC? So, hey, I heard you loud and clear. So we're going to sit down with the board, and we're going to talk about some cause, and I want deliberate. I want some serious, because this is the last time for me to get it right, or at least strive to get it right. So my direction has really been, and I've had these conversations, is that hey, if you're an art and we're going to stop telling arts that they need to move. Now, there's certainly some opportunities that are out there now that we have AGR opportunities, AGR command opportunities, and some of those things. But if I look at, and so I grew up in obviously 4th Air Force on the MAV side, and if I look at all the chiefs that molded me and mentored me, Chief Chojanowski, Protzman, McGee, Kirkbride. I mean, I can go on and on. Morrissey. I can go on and on about all of these great chiefs that I still, to this day, if I pick up the phone, I call them chief. Even as my seat in the AFRC, and some of these chiefs were, I think, retired out at the squadron level. That is the level of impact and the amount of respect that I have for them. So for me to tell a Chief Morrissey or a Chief Prossman, or hey, guess what? You need to move. You know what? So us on this DT board, we can give you one more point on your as a vector. I just think that we can do. I think that we can do better than that, because guess what? If I can lead, if I'm not leading in the wing, then at my own location here, hey, I'm not going to be effective someplace else, and vice versa. I think there's enough movement around the squadrons so that within a wing that you can get enough, I would say, personnel changes. There's enough around that we're not just, I think, just telling people to move just for the sake of it. If we don't have a system in place like they do wing commanders and some of those where you actually pay people to move. But if I gotta if somebody tell, hey, Tim White, you need to move, and I'm gonna sell my home, I'm gonna ask my spouse to give up her job, or I'm gonna take my kids just for a team of Chiefs can give me one more point on my DT process. I think that's why people are reluctant, or they don't completely buy into it. The other piece is with CLC. So Chief Leadership course, I made a change this year that so with the RegAF Chief Leadership course, it's a 1 year that you, and now this is it's a requirement for you to attend within 1 year of becoming a chief, and basically it's Chief 101. These are the things that you need to be successful as you enter the seat. What we were doing, I think, is that, and of course we've had these opinions, we would go on a record and we would look at it. We have very few minutes and I can go in there. It's easy for me to do. Okay, well, you don't have CLC, no senior enlisted joint PME. Hey, let me put these 2 marks on. Then you get a feedback that says, hey, attend CLC, complete senior enlisted joint PME, or do this or do that, consider this. And guess what? I've been a chief for 6 years, 8 years. Well, guess what? Sure, there's relationship pieces and networking that you can get, but man, if you've been a chief for 8 years, 6 years, and I'm still sending you to CLC, and you still need to go, then guess what? We owe you better than that. And then also the other piece is, and I'm going to jump off my soapbox, Cindy, so you got me started. The other piece is, I spend a lot of time, I think, focusing on, how we look at ourselves internally, not only internally, not externally, how RegAF looks at us, but how do we look as a chief, and how we value ourselves as chiefs. So when we talk about CLC, you go to CLC and you go around the room and you're at the table and everybody's giving introductions, and you got seniors on the RegAF side, and they've been basically they're seniors and they're waiting for a line number, so they haven't even promoted to chief. So you're talking about some seniors, maybe you may get 1 or 2 that have already, had line numbers of 1 and 2, and they promoted right before the class started. And then you get around to the reserve piece, and then guess what? I've been a chief for 8 years or 7 years. And then it's the equivalence of a RegAF chief within their first year, and then you got at the same table an Air Force Reserve chief, sometimes 5, 6, 4 years, that there is a equivalency in that. So we're going to stop penalizing folks that if you've already met your gate, and because you don't have, CLC or some of those other things, because this is how I was conditioned to what I think is important, is to give them some real meaningful vectors. And what that means is, hey, don't tell me to move. Don't tell me to take CLC. Hey, tell me about some opportunities that are out there. Hey, I didn't get a chance to go to or if you want me to take senior enlisted joint PME, hey, help explain to me how that is going to benefit me, or explain or help me understand that we got the Chiefs group, and the Chiefs group tracks all the Chiefs position across Air Force Reserve Command and other opportunities that are outside. Hey, that's what I want a vector to tell me. Tell me about the position at the White House that's opening up, because you looked at my experience and you noticed that I got joint experience and you think that I should be good for this. Or, I got the desire based on my feedback that I put in my my vector that I want to work at the MAGCOM. Well, hey, I want to know that when the next MAGCOM CEM is rotating out, is that in my deck of cards? Those are the type of things that I think that we can get, better at. We've gotten a lot better as far as telling people, hey, congratulations on your most recent deck, or congratulations on your current assignment, to prove to you that we read your records. That's all fine and dandy, but I think that we can make better use of our time. So this year, we got a meeting with the Chiefs group and with our KPL. We're going to have all the projected vacancies between now and between the next year, as this list is going to expire, and then even beyond that, we can actually look at projected turn dates and give people some meaningful vectors on opportunities that will be eligible for them. So I think, and again, we'll factor in human error. I think that a lot of times, sometimes we sit on these panels, these boards, and it's subjective rather than being objective. But we're trying to get that subjective piece out of it, being as objective as possible, giving people some meaningful feedback that they can use. But it's like the lotto, right? You can't win if you don't play. So hey, you got to at least throw your name in the hat. And so certainly, I think that that we're going to get better. We've made some incremental steps along the way. And Cindy, this is what I love about you and the other NAV command chiefs, is that you guys give me that feedback. And you share with us what the field is thinking, so we can improve. So I'm hoping we'll go down here next week, and I think we'll do the KPL process, command chief screening board process, and I'm hoping the feedback that we get will be better this year, and in the future we'll just have to keep making this process better.
Good stuff, Chief White. I'm glad I got you fired up, just like you get us fired up more oftentimes than none. But it's all goodness, right? We're all passionate, and and we just want to do the best we can by our airmen. And like I said, good stuff. We've definitely exceeded our time, Chief. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us for this Tactical Edge. Greatly appreciate General Scobie and your leadership. Definitely honored to serve with you all, and again, just can't thank you enough. Siobhan, over to you, Chief White, unless you have any last minute comments.
No, hey, just want to say, hey, thanks, Siobhan, and thanks Cindy. And I sat in the seat at the 4th Air Force, and you've taken 4th Air Force to heights and far exceeded, I mean, anything that I've done in the seat. And so you got the Tim Whites of the world, and then you got the Cindy Villas, and there's some others that are out there that are doing some amazing things. So I just really appreciate your leadership down there. And then Siobhan, hey, appreciate what you're doing too, as far as this this Tactical Edge, because hey, guess what? If we don't share our story, if we don't get out in front of the narrative, and then somebody else will. So I just really appreciate what you're doing and having me on.
Thank you for your time, Chief. And Chief Villa, did you have any final thoughts before we?
Thanks for your kind words, Chief. You're too kind.
All right, well, that's it for this episode of Tactical Edge. Remember, you can stream all previous episodes on Apple, Spotify, Divots, and YouTube. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to get the latest and greatest from 4th Air Force. I'm Siobhan Cleveland. Thanks for listening.